Welcome to the Bitcoin Aggregated podcast. Today we've got lots to get through. We had a great session on Monday around the curriculum design, which I'm really excited about. So thanks, Jacques, for building all that out and running us through it. It's been really cool. If anyone wants to go and watch that back, it's on our YouTube feed. Oh, here's Jeremy as well. Cool. We really do have a full house. So we might do some intros, I think, to kick off. We'll go from the top. Craig, did you want to give us an intro about yourself and what you're working on?
Yeah, I'm currently in Vietnam. I've been overseas teaching since like 1999 with my wife and family, and I'm a science teacher by trade and middle school teacher. And we've had, but probably about 15 years ago, I really got into STEAM and innovation and making makerspace labs, and we ran about 4 or 5. I directed 4 or 5 maker fairs, 2 in Shanghai and a couple in Doha, Qatar. So recently I'm from Qatar, but we're starting a new school here in Vietnam, in Hanoi. And it's a STEAM bilingual school ecosystem. So we're in the process of building schools in Hanoi, but we also have schools in Bangkok, Ho Chi Minh City as well. And we're just, the CEO we're working for is just really into STEAM learning and 21st century. And so he's going, all guns, every direction here and building this ecosystem. So I'm the STEAM director here. And so really into kind of developing fine tech and looking at bringing in cryptocurrency and all of that into our education as well for our kids here. So excited to actually, my colleague, our head of school, Michael Lambert's been in a lot of conversations with Kieran over the last couple of years, and he's shared a lot of information about what he's doing, and I'm just really excited to be here and meet all you guys and actually meet Kieran face to face now. And so I'm just kind of listening in on what you guys are doing, and hopefully maybe I can kind of contribute down the road here too. So
yeah, awesome.
Nice to meet all you guys.
Nice to meet you. So we've been looking at sort of working together for the last couple of years now, and I think the pandemic really got in the way of that for a lot of it. But it's going to be awesome. So it's great to have you guys on board, and hopefully we can get Michael on the next one, which would be great. Bob, did you want to give an intro to yourself? And it's good to see you again, finally.
Well, I'm a U.S. based educator. I'm in my retirement phase here, but I've been involved in sort of innovative schools in the U.S. and developing innovative schools for about 40 years. And I've just been connected with Karen and Ray Trotter at Urana Park, which, even though I've never been there, became my favorite elementary school on the planet. So, and through that, I've picked up on Karen's passions with cryptocurrency and everything. And I'm totally ignorant of this whole field, and I'm just joining this call to see what you're doing. That's all.
Awesome. Thanks for coming in, and we'll sure. Definitely. I think knowing nothing is great, because we'd love to get your feedback on what we're creating as well. So that's awesome. Chris, did you want to give an intro to yourself? We've kind of worked together on different projects over the years, and it's cool to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you all. Yeah, like you said, I've known Kieran for about 5 or so years. We've been sort of stomping the Melbourne cryptocurrency scene for that time. I'm actually back in town. I live in Sydney at the moment, but my sort of specialty lies in sort of 2 specific fields, which is probably crypto security and digital privacy. So those are sort of 2 things that I'm passionate about most, and I work on a number of projects that kind of help those fields.
Awesome. Yeah, I think your Session project. If you guys haven't seen Session, it's an instant messaging app, basically akin to Signal, but with no IDs. It's really, really cool, and what they've built is amazing. So we want to try and integrate that into this specifically for ANZ. I think that's going to be really cool, and we've got a meeting after this with the Stacks guys about. We actually got our grants approved, so we're pretty excited. So that'll be a big piece of that, and it looks like Electra's jumping in as well. We might kick off then. I think there's, if you guys want to see, we've done intros for the rest of us a bunch of times, so you can go back and have a look at them. But basically, yeah, we've got a bit of an agenda today to get through. I think the first, welcome Electra. The first thing we should probably kick off with, I reckon, is the curriculum design stuff that we went through on Monday, because it was really exciting. And yeah, Jacques, did you want to share a bit about that and where you're at? Because I know you just shared a new Google Doc, which I think is going to be really helpful if you're still there. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I got it pulled up here. I can share my screen. Just to give a little context before I do that, is just the curriculum design. You can think of it as like a database structure or an application programming interface, where it's really just we'll be entering a different set of values for different sections. And then once we do that, the output is going to be like a conceptual design for like the ecosystem strategy for the decentralized education system. And then subsequently, when we have this loaded into GitHub, learners will be able to clone like this structure, and then they'll be able to create like a repository that reflects exactly how they want to create their own learning journey. Oh, I tried sharing my screen. It's not letting me right now.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
No worries.
Should be right now.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay. Yeah, so this is how it's starting off. We just have it in, we also have this in GitHub, but I think it might be easier for us to just see it here in Google Docs. So this is you can think of this as like the main section of how you'll see things on GitHub. It's going to introduce the organization, the School of Bitcoin, the projects that this is specifically focused on, the decentralized autonomous education system, the conceptual design specifically. And then this is something we're still working through. This is experimental. So like thinking of it as like an institution programming interface as a play on like the application programming interface. So like the idea here is if we can help empower learners to realize that as they're developing their own curriculum, if they can see the parallels, how it's also impacting like our institutions in different ways. So like in this specifically education. So like the goals with this programming interface will be to create the conceptual design for the decentralized autonomous education system. And then once the conceptual design is set, like the more nuanced aspects that we're trying to get out of this is to define the ecosystem strategy and the tokenomics for the curriculum that we'll be building that out with Stacks. And then ultimately, we want to take this process that we're using to develop this so that we can easily copy all the contents, like I was saying, and then this will be the foundation of the project-based learning that we do with the School of Bitcoin. It's split into 10 different sections. It starts with us just going through like the overall goal, what are the challenges of this. So in this, we talked about like we're focusing on the education system, specifically the challenges financial illiteracy, and like so. And as we also go through this, we'll be defining different books and things that we can pull added information from to give a little bit more context to the mission here. And I don't need to go on this, harp on this too much, but like the next section here, after we define kind of like the goal, is we'll be digging into like what we're actually decentralizing. So we dug into this a little bit yesterday, on Monday. So we'll be digging into financial literacy. Specifically within financial literacy, we'll be thinking about this as like the test design or assessment design. We're still kind of like figuring out the best way to describe it. And then the ultimate product that we want to bring out of this is the open learning network, like the tokenomics of how things will be able to work decentralized and autonomously. So, I think this is a good enough intro without taking too much of the time. And so this is taking through the roadmap. Next sections will be going through the branding. I'll stop sharing my screen here. But as we go through it, it'll go through the branding. There'll be a marketing strategy. There'll be an NFT marketplace. That'll be the certificate once they go through the course. And then like the bulk of it is going to be the curriculum. So it'll be starting off as like documentation that we'll have for learners to go through. It'll be like a MOOC essentially. But then as people see exactly how we went through this process, they'll be able to clone it and then create a similar structure for themselves so they can build their own program. Anything else you think we should touch on for that, Kieran?
Yeah, maybe for Craig's school, I suppose specifically how a learner at his school might actually fork like what we've done, like an example of that, if you can think of something.
Yeah,
particularly with STEAM, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess Craig, what are there any like specific programs that your learners are working on now, your students? You're muted.
You're muted.
Right now, our school here isn't opened up yet. So it's going to be opening up here in September. That's going to be our first school that we're getting going. So right now we're just in the process of writing curriculum and actually recruiting teachers.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So with this, even like, I guess like as you're working through your curriculums, we could kind of like dissect that and turn that curriculum into like, it would be part of this, we'd be able to plug it into like the course section of the overall outline.
Yeah.
So like you'd be able to clone the entire structure that I just showed, plug in your curriculum to that specific section. And then also the learners would be able to choose what their specific like project-based learning is. For like the initial structure that we have now, the default project is building a Bitcoin node. But then if the learner wanted to do something else, if the learner wanted to, I don't know, what other projects have you done in the past, Kieran? In like the
around
previous...
that, so I suppose like in the STEAM center that we had at Marana, I don't know if you've seen anything on that, Craig, but basically it's a student-centric space that we built where the kids kind of voted on funds that we got for the school on how to deck it out. So I suppose like the big one would be like this, what comes to mind is 3D printing. So like we had a 3D printing space where the kids were making all sorts of cool projects, like their own cases and that sort of thing. So that could be like a fork of the project and, you know, writing it up as a DAO. So Craig is going to run a curriculum right inside.
Okay.
That's a good question. Can you see that question in the chat, Craig?
No, we are actually writing our own curriculum, so it's not IB. So we're starting from the ground up.
That's awesome. So cool. Well, thanks heaps for going through that, Chuck. I think that's great.
Yeah.
And we'll reconvene on Monday again if you guys have the time, and we'll go through the rest of it. So I think once we get that really succinct, it's going to be a lot clearer for like schools who want to run their own version of it, sort of thing. So we got the resources page. That's been awesome. Thanks everyone for putting stuff in there. I think it's been yeah, like we've got so many cool links and videos and books and all sorts of things in there. I think it's really getting it to a format that's easily read by people. So I think we're kind of tossing up between a wiki and was it GitLab we were going to use, Chuck?
Like the GitHub Learning Lab.
Yeah. So like for all the resources.
Yeah, I think like we can have, I think the resources would make sense to have in the decentralized autonomous education system repository, because in that case, they would essentially be available to any learner whenever they clone it, the repo. So yeah, I think we'll have to think about exactly where we place it within the whole system, but I think that would be great to have really embedded within it.
So maybe that's something we work on as part of the curriculum days as well. I think that'd be worth doing. All right, cool. So that's that. We've got like topics and stuff for that as well, I think, but maybe that's another meeting. I think the big one today is around the DAO setup. So I know Electra and Gordon have done a lot of research into that, and you probably
there's not a lot of research there because there's a lot to go on yet. But yeah, we're having a look at how DAOs are being structured in other areas and looking at a suitable entity to be able to run it in Australia. We should have some guidelines forthcoming in coming months from the Bragg report, but we don't exactly know yet what others are doing. I think we're just sort of running with it. Perhaps a not-for-profit structure would be suitable. I'd be wary of trusts because of recent changes in laws, but with distributions, which is a bit complicated for this call, but I could just mention it in the online, make reference to it. But perhaps a charity kind of structure would be suitable, and the simplest possibly being an incorporated association, which are most not-for-profits run as. But they're kind of run by state rules. So we're in a couple of different states. Well, yeah. What do you think, Gordon? We haven't had to chat this morning about the separate inquiries we've been doing, but we'll come back.
Yeah, sure. So excuse me, I'm finding similar structures. Been listening to about 8 hours worth of some lawyers from Denver DAO, all talking about the different structures across different states, different countries. There is some state-to-state based rules, there's country-to-country based rules. So yeah, there's a bit to work through. All comes down to the one of the main things is protecting the liability of the actual creators of the DAO and the main participants in the DAO, whether they're actually signatories to the multi-sig wallets or not. They still may be seen as having a key role if they're just actually contributing in a founding sort of in a core team sense. So I think quite a bit to learn. I think that one thing a bit of a message I'm getting is to not to have a rush to get your DAO going. The key would be to actually get your business going. So yeah, I think there's quite a lot to be learned still. I'm setting up a Twitter Spaces chat with the guys from my DAO, the guys that just set up in the Marshall Islands. Hopefully they'll be in a couple of weeks. It'd be good to jump in on that. So to have any questions, see if we can get some Australians in there. They're obviously a US based, a US jurisdiction of some kind, the Marshall Islands. So, questions about, what does it mean for people in all different parts of the world joining into DAOs, and, particularly in that core and founding sense, and the ones signing, holding the signatories to the multi-sig wallets. So I think, we're doing research. This said, it'd be good to chat with the guys to see, Jarks, what is happening over at Stacks. And I noticed there's a DAO channel in Discord. So I hadn't had the time this week to dive into that to see, if that's Stacks building out a DAO for Stacks, or if it's just a Stacks channel in DAO, a DAO channel for Stacks. So I think, it looks pretty early in their space. But Jarks, you might be way down deeper on what's going on with DAOs at Stacks.
I wasn't involved in a few of the calls that they were having. They're trying to figure out they're calling it like DAO tooling. They're trying to figure out exactly what tools people need within the Stacks community to create DAOs. I haven't been on the calls with them in the past few weeks, so it'd be interesting to hear what they have to say when we speak to them soon.
Yeah, it'd be good. Obviously, you got to have there's the writing out. If it's, say, for example, it's in some sort of association, that forms the basis of it. Then, you know, writing out all those articles. There's quite a bit of conversation you have, I think, with a lawyer, and finding, yeah, depending on which jurisdiction you're in. There's serious teams set up now. Most of the businesses are probably about 1 year old that help facilitate the setting up of the DAOs. I think they've got lots of questions still. So yeah, we'll keep diving down that rabbit hole.
So for 11:30, if you guys can jump in to that meeting, where because I think basically it's going to be like pretty much we have the grant, and Lewis is going to kind of run us through that. So I suppose the big thing in my mind is figuring out how to set up the pool, and maybe getting his input on that. But yeah,
that's the stacking pool.
Yeah,
sure.
So,
yep.
So
I did a bit of a dive into stacking. It all looks pretty simple. You need about 100,000 stacks to actually run your own stacking pool. Otherwise, you're just joining in with others, you know. But how to set it up for the community, that's going to be really cool to learn that.
Yeah, I think that'll be number one. And I suppose, two, sort of the legal stuff, and how we actually accept the donations for it. But also, so I wanted to ask Chris just about basically the ANZ grant that we're getting is to set up a community for stacks specifically. So it'll be like a sub-DAO of the School of Bitcoin. And we were thinking of using, like, obviously Aussie software session. Could you run us through like the process of sort of setting up a group, what a public and private group is, and like the differences between that, if you could?
Sure. Yeah. So at the moment we have two types of groups, which are at the moment called open and closed groups. Open group, well, actually we'll start with closed groups as they're a little bit easier. So closed groups can all be made from within the app, from the user's client, pretty much just as if you would be making a group in any other sort of messaging application. You know, create group, invite the users, name the group, and then you're on your way. So it's very straightforward, very easy to do. Those types of groups have all of the same security and privacy benefits that all of the other regular one-on-one conversations have from within session. So everything's end-to-end encrypted, everything's onion protected, everything's decentralized. So that's really easy. The only downside of closed groups at the moment is the limitation of them. Can only fit about 100 people. Before that, you're at capacity. So if we're talking about groups larger than 100 users, like large scale groups, which is common for a lot of communities, we will need to probably go down the open group route, which is a little bit more technically involved, requires some server setup and some other little bits and pieces. We've got a guide which runs you through exactly what steps are required in order to create an open server group. There are some additional privacy trade-offs comparatively to the closed group system. Again, that's all explained in some of our documentation as to how it differs. But essentially, an open group setup would have an infinite, so to speak, amount of capacity available. So for groups larger than 100 users, that's what we typically point people towards. In the future, as session continues to grow, remember, it's only an app that's been around for about 2 or so years. And it's only probably been usable, reliable, and stable for the last, say, 6 to 9 months, like most software. It's going to get easier, and we're going to implement easier ways for people to open up open groups. That's part of our plan moving forward, to basically have one-click open group setup. So for people who aren't as technically minded or don't necessarily have the time or the skills to be able to go and create open groups, they'll be able to basically pay for this type of service where you can have a one-click setup. So that'll be available in the future, but for now, like most of this industry, you need to be a little bit techie and a little bit hacky in order to set up some of the more complex structures. If the group's only going to start off small, then it can, of course, just be set up as a closed group, which, like I said, can be done within app, all super easy, as you would expect it, like any other application. Once the group grows towards larger than 100 participants, then it might be worth kind of shifting over to an open group setup, or perhaps it's just better to start off there straight off the bat. I mean, I leave that up to you.
Can you migrate? So like if you have a closed group, can you migrate to an open one like later on if we wanted to?
I mean, you can always migrate. The question is how convenient, how smooth is that migration? So I don't think there's any inbuilt mechanisms to essentially turn it into another type of group. But of course, you could simply just say, hey guys, public announcement where we're shifting over to this group. Here's how you join, see you there kind of thing. That's probably, for less than 100 people, that's probably adequate enough. I would like to think at least.
Yeah.
Is it a desktop app?
Sorry, what was that question, Electra?
Is it, it's a mobile app?
It's cross-platform, so it's available on iOS, Android, desktop, Mac, Windows, Linux, pretty much all of the main operating systems and clients. And it's free to use.
Awesome. Yeah.
And Chris, just a question on the when you go to the open, you said there's a couple of things you've got to, this privacy and likes. Is there? I was reading in the setting up of it. Is there something we need to be careful or know about in regards to data security when we run an open one? Do we have to comply with like I don't know what the rules are in Australia, but in the EU, the data security rules?
That's a really great question, and we're constantly seeking legal advice in this area because it's always changing, and it is dependent on the jurisdiction. And we obviously are an Australian-based non-for-profit, so we are, our jurisdiction here is in Australia. But in that same token, we've done a lot of work and a lot of research and some commentary on some of this legislation that has come out over the last couple of years. The Assistance and Access Bill probably being one of the main ones, and more recently the social media stuff. So it's a bit of a tricky situation. We're in a weird spot because we don't have any control over the network. So if the government came up to us and said, hey, we know Kieran is using Session to recruit bad people to perform bad things. Could you please place, whatever label they want to put, could you please give us Kieran's message history and message information? We would then say, who's Kieran? We literally have no idea who any user is on our network at any given time. We honestly couldn't tell you if Kieran was even using the app. Even if you had his session ID, which is what we use in replacement of mobile phone numbers or any type of personal identifiers that you typically give away when you create an account on any other type of messaging app. We've written that, so there's no requirements for any personal identifiers upon sign up. What we then give you is what we call the session ID, which is basically like a crypto wallet. If anyone's familiar with public key and private key encryption, it's very similar to that. We just call it a session ID. And basically I've got a dog who's about to attack me, but Toshi, come on. With that session ID, that's your anonymous or pseudo-anonymous identifier from within Session. And us as developers of Session, we have no insight into that whatsoever. We don't have logs. We can't see any traffic. Again, like I said earlier, all of the message routing on Session gets done, obviously end-to-end encrypted, but also uses onion protection, which basically obfuscates any type of common metadata that could be used to track users. So IP addresses, timestamps, all of that tangential sort of data beyond the actual contents of the message that kind of gets caught up in it all, and can be used to perform a lot of quite accurate analysis. All of that stuff is kind of hidden and removed on Session. But yeah, to your question, Gordon, about the open groups and kind of what data you have to back up, there will be some level of centralization, so to speak, when using an open group setup because somebody is running a server. I am not a lawyer, so I can't comment specifically on what are the responsibilities of that particular Session open group, I guess, administrator, if you want to call it. Again, we're still seeking ongoing advice legally because the landscape changes so quickly that, yeah, for now, I think we're not really a target because we're fairly small. We've got about 200,000-300,000 active users, which is pretty good. But at the end of the day, we're not in the millions or the tens of millions or the hundreds of millions like WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, and all that. I mean, maybe that day will come. But our defense is mostly rested on the fact that we have engineered any ability to track anybody. So the government could come up and say to us, please tell us what's going on in this group. We'd say, we'd love to, but we can't. That's essentially our defense.
So if we get, so say we do a closed group initially, and like we all join and it's great, and we have maybe some learners joining as well, and then we get some nuff that joins in, is it easy enough to boot them out?
Yeah, there are admin controls and moderation controls, and we're building out more and more of these as well. But essentially, with a closed group, someone needs to be invited to that group. So
Yep.
you would like to hope that people within the community aren't just inviting randoms. If they are, then maybe they're a bad apple as well. But yes, as the moderator, as the admin of the group, you can simply block users from joining.
That's awesome. Well, that sounds like we'll do a closed group. I think it's such a cool app, like what you guys have built. It'd be awesome to support the project, like with this specifically. And I think because we're doing an ANZ group to kick off, it would make a lot of sense. So I think we'll definitely do some more research into that. But yeah, thanks for that. That's a lot of clarification.
It's just worth mentioning that like Session is an end-to-end encrypted messaging app that focuses on privacy. So a lot of the bells and whistles that you would expect, or that maybe you're accustomed to in some of the other messaging apps, aren't just there yet. It is an immature app, and it has focused a lot on privacy and security. And generally, that is the trade-off when it comes to usability. So Telegram, which a lot of people have likely used, is probably one of the most pleasant experiences when it comes to messaging in terms of groups, file sharing. It's really, really pleasant to use, but it does not use end-to-end encryption by default. You can only use end-to-end encryptions through what they call secret chats, and which is only available on mobile clients. So if you're talking to somebody on a desktop client, your privacy's out the window, your security's out the window. But that's the trade-off that they've decided to make, where we've gone the other way. We've said those are non-compromises for us and for our users. And so a lot of the bells and whistles just quite aren't there yet. So it is in its best state that it's ever been, of course, and it's only going to continue to get better the more that we develop on it. And these usability features are next on the plate as well. So our team is now shifting from making sure the message reliability and all that sort of stuff is strong, in which we think it's in a good space. Over the next sort of quarter to 2 quarters, we'll be focusing on making it more usable, making it more fun. It's pretty good. I mean, we've been using it, Kieran, to talk to each other for the last couple of weeks, and I don't think we've had any issues whatsoever. But it's I'm just trying to put everyone's expectations back to reality. It's not a work organization tool. It's purely a private messaging application. And so whenever there is a requirement for secure and private communications, this is the app that you can rely on. If you want to just send large files, we've got a file cap, for instance. You can't send files over 10 megabytes, which is quite small, of course. And a lot of people would like that to be increased, and it will be increased, of course, but it's just not one of the high priorities at the moment. But in the future, that will be addressed.
To be honest, I reckon it's a way better UX than Telegram. I hate Telegram. Just the notifications and nonsense you get from that. I've like uninstalled it. Jeremy had a good question. Are the same moderation tools available to open groups as closed groups? That's a good one.
I actually think there's more. There's actually more moderation things available to open groups. There's a little bit more flexibility. I don't know how much of that has been built out necessarily, but yeah, there is the ability to like have pinned notes, have like announcements sort of stuff. If anyone wants to try out the app, you can download it from any of the app stores, or you can go to our website, getsession.org, and you can download the APK files, or you can even find it on F-Droid if you're interested in sourcing it from that way. But basically have a play with it, set up a few open groups, connect with a few people. If people want to connect with me or Kieran, we're happy to share our session IDs. I'll drop mine in the chat in a second. and people can connect with me there. There are a couple of open groups that you can just join. Because they're open groups, they're kind of like public channels, I guess. If someone knows the URL or knows how to enter it, they can simply enter it. Whereas versus a closed group, they need to be, specifically invited to the club, so to say, by another member. Whereas an open group is, as it sounds, it's open, it's public. So anyone can theoretically join it should they have the access to, as in the URL or the QR code or whatever. But yeah, there's a couple of suggested open groups from within the open group dashboard where you can join. So there's like a session one, a crypto one, a privacy one, and a bunch of other recommended ones. Go into those and have a play around, see how they function, see if you can envision what it might look like for our application here. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please do reach out. I'll drop my session ID right now.
That's awesome. Thanks heaps, Chris. That's really clarifies things, and I think it's going to be a great addition to the Stacks community in Australia. So that's awesome. Oh yeah, cool. That's what the IDs look like. I've actually got like my name for mine. I forget how I did it. I think using Oxen or something, but we probably don't need to do that.
So you can actually add me either through that long character string, or you can add me through my handle, which is Lungdoge, which I've also posted in there. So there's something that we do something similar, because obviously removing a mobile phone number is kind of annoying, because that's like makes contact discovery really easy. So when you're in Signal, for instance, when you join Signal, all of your friends that have you in their phones as a contact who also have Signal get a message to say, hey, Chris just joined Signal, which in my opinion is a bad thing, because that's like now broadcasting to everybody that you know in your phone or in their phones that have you, to say, hey, Chris is on Signal. And Signal has this kind of reputation of being private, and then people are now like, well, what's up? Like one of the funniest stories I heard about this was some politicians from, I can't remember where, I think it was the UK or maybe the US, when the WhatsApp changed their terms of service and basically said, hey, we finally admit that we're sharing all of our data, all of our metadata with our parent company, Facebook. Everyone went, oh, we can't believe this. We're not using WhatsApp anymore. Let's jump over to Telegram and Signal. So there was this, and we got a bit of kickback as well in session. Our user growth went through the roof, but Signal got a lot of user growth, like 500%, thousands of percent in a matter of days. And what ended up happening was a lot of journalists started seeing notifications in their Signal app to say, oh, Nancy Pelosi just joined Signal. Oh, Joe Biden just joined Signal. And so all these politicians who were joining Signal because they were realizing quickly that WhatsApp is the place to be, were being notified. The journalists were being notified. I just thought it was hilarious,
That's
like the irony of them trying to be private, then broadcasting to all the journalists that they're no longer now being private. But when you do get rid of mobile phones, it makes it a lot more difficult to share contacts with people and to make friends. So that's one of the big issues with Session is, because we're not connecting it to a mobile phone number, how do I find people? So these Session IDs are quite ugly. Obviously, as you can see that I posted in the chat, it's not something that you can memorize. So what we've done is we've done something similar to what I guess how IP addresses work on the internet. If I was to say, hey, come visit my website, it's 123.567.92. It's a terrible user experience. So someone came up with DNS, and we've come up with a similar type concept where we call ONS, which stands for Oxen Name Service, which basically, I have basically repackaged my Session ID to also be known as my online avatar name, which is Lungdoge. And you can do that in Session. So instead of having that long Session ID, you can map it to something like, KD Nolan or something like that. And if that's available, you can purchase that like you would with a domain name from a domain provider. You can purchase an ONS and lock in that ONS and map it to your Session ID. So contact discovery can be a little easier. You can say to people, hey, add me on Session. My username's Lungdoge. So that's something that's kind of cool as well.
Very cool indeed. I mean, yeah, it brings up so many ideas around privacy and security that we probably could build out as part of the curriculum, I think, for the School of Bitcoin, because there's so much stuff that you kind of take for granted, you forget about, and probably all the stuff you've mentioned, Chris, you probably take a lot of it for granted as well. It's like, oh yeah, everyone knows, that WhatsApp isn't secure or whatever it is. but there's a lot of people out there that don't. So that's great. Well, thanks for running through that. I think that's going to be really helpful for the next meeting. I just wanted to jump into, before we do, Jeremy, did you have anything you wanted to add? Because I know you had a few questions on, we were going back and forth on Twitter and a few things, but yeah, floor's yours if you want to ask anything.
Oh, no real questions. I'm just sitting in and just having a listen to see what you guys are up to. I haven't been to a couple of meetings, so just catch up.
Cool. No problems. I know you're doing a lot of stuff with gamification, so I think down the track that's going to be really important to integrate into the School of Bitcoin. But I suppose Craig and Bob, have you got? You probably have a bunch of questions. Did you want to jump in with anything, and we can try and answer as best we can?
Right now I'm just trying to absorb all of this and absorb all the lingo and everything else as well. So I'm writing down all kinds of notes and things to start looking up and try to figure all this out. One of the things
that's probably my fault.
No, I actually just logged into session here too. So I'm anxious to kind of get into that too and see what that's all about.
So Chris, just a little question there. So the Get Sessions runs on the Oxen network, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it doesn't use centralized servers. So when messages get routed between my device and Kieran's device, typically on most messaging applications or most services in the world, there's some sort of company that sits in the middle that says, okay, let's take the information from A and let's send it to B. And they're kind of like a honeypot and a centralized server, which isn't necessarily censorship resistant. They can be subpoenaed, they can be shut down, their servers could go offline. So what we've done is we've created an incentivized what we call service node network, which is a decentralized network of around about 1,800 servers or community-run nodes from people all around the world. We've got people in Germany, in America, in Australia, in Japan, everywhere, all over the place. And all of these individuals act as infrastructure for a session. So when a message gets sent from me to Kieran, it goes from me to one of these servers somewhere in the world. And because we use onion protection, it actually goes to multiples of these servers. So it actually hops around a couple of times and then it ends up at the final location. And the whole concept behind this is that A, we don't control the network, so we can't shut down and we can't censor people. B, no one else can either. So a state level actor couldn't come up to us and say, oh, let's turn off session in Australia, or let's turn off session in Telegram in Russia, or wherever in the world. That's part of the reason why we've gone for that kind of design choice, because we don't even want to be able to turn off the network. We don't want to have the power to say, well, this person should be silenced, or this person. I mean, obviously that poses a number of other questions, like, well, where do you draw the line? And that's a whole nother conversation that we could have, but it's a big topic to go down, but that's kind of how it works.
And for people new to crypto and the likes, the actual software consensus layer that you have running on Oxen, is that a fork of another blockchain?
It is its own chain. It does come as a soft fork from Monero, which is another privacy project, probably the most well known and most well respected in the space. But it shares no history with any other blockchain. So it is its own network from day one. It has its own transactional history, et cetera, et cetera. It's one of the more unique designs that I've seen. It's just got elements of different projects that we've kind of mashed together. For instance, no one's created a proof of stake network using what they call the CryptoNote protocol, which is a type of protocol that a lot of privacy coins are built on. Most of these are proof of work, similar to Bitcoin, where they require hash rate mining and whatnot. Oxen is the first of its kind to build that type of proof of stake system on that type of protocol, which is quite unique in its own right. But yeah, that kind of answers your question, I think, Gordon.
Yeah, cool. So, and again, just for the new people, you've got the computer network down below, then you're running some software which provides that consensus, and then you've got the applications and sessions and application. Is that a decentralized application built on that network?
That's correct, yeah. So the whole idea of what we're trying to build at the foundational level with with Oxen as the blockchain and the service node network on top of that, is to be able to power both our applications that we build, Session and LokiNet being the two popular ones, but also have other people leverage this network as well. So wherever someone wants an application or a website or anything that lives on the internet that they require censorship resistance, privacy, all of the features that our network provides, they can build on top of our network. It's actually quite easy. Obviously, we're not there yet because we're still new and we're still building that vision, but that's the kind of long-term goal, is any type of infrastructure that needs to live on the internet where these qualities are important. And it's not for everything. Of course, everyone wants to think we can blockchain everything, but that's not often the case or not often required. But for the times where privacy and decentralization and censorship resistant and these properties are important, they can be built using leveraging our network.
Thanks, Chris. That's awesome.
Very cool indeed. Very coll. Yeah, and finally, Bob, did you have any? You probably have a bunch of questions. Are you muted?
No, I'm fine. I'm following it.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Well, this has been great, guys. I think we better get ready for the next meeting. So whoever's going to jump in at 11:30, I've just sent a message to the group. More than welcome. Thanks for coming in, Craig and Bob. Bob, we'll do a catch up with Ray, I think, when I'm back in Melbourne. So I'm in Canberra at the moment. When I get back to Melb's, yeah, we'll set that up so I can help him with tech support. I think he probably needs it. And yeah, Chris, when I get back, we'll catch up as well. We might even do just a Zoom or something before then. But yeah, thanks everybody, and I'll see everyone who's going to jump in at 11:30 who's going to jump in, and then we'll do curriculum design on Monday. So whoever wants to be involved with that, Jeremy, you might be interested in that actually for next Monday if you have the time. And obviously, Craig, you're welcome as well if you want to jump in and do some more curriculum design. This is great. Thanks heaps, guys, and we'll catch up soon.
All right.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Lovely to
Kieran.
meet you all.
Yeah.